All right, welcome back to the Chatter's Box. My name is Kyle McClellan, your host, and I am joined by the Cardinals' all-time saves leader, former teammate of mine, Jason Isringhausen. Izzy, thank you for stepping into the Chatter's Box.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I don't think I've ever did any interviews in this booth, so it's pretty cool.
Do you like the name?
The Chatter's Box?
The Chatter's Box.
Well, I mean, it's a name.
Come on. Put a lot
Did
of
you
thought
come
into
up
that.
into
Yeah,
it?
of course I did.
Okay.
We're official. We got the logo. We got
That's not bad. I like the logo, and the poster's nice.
Yeah.
Pretty cool.
A little water damage, but we hide that behind the computer. Anyway, I'm excited about this one. I mean, me and you played together in 2008. We'll get into that in a little bit. But you are still very actively involved with the team. I've been down to spring training on sponsors trips and stuff. You're in uniform. You're back there with the minor league guys. You're talking to the minor league guys all the time. Give us a little update on what Jason Isringhausen is doing now, and especially here in the organization, what you're doing.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know what my job title is. I always say I'm special advisor because I guess I'm a roving pitching instructor, but I work with the coaching and I work with the managers, and they run stuff by me during the games and things. And did I do this right? Did I do that right? You know, in our lower levels and things like that. And it's mainly I'm stationed here in Edwardsville, Illinois, so I drive to Memphis, AAA, Springfield, AA, and Peoria our high A ball. We flip-flopped our A-ball teams, so now Peoria is our high A. So I get hit all three of those, and a lot of our prospects are there. And I got to go to Florida at the end of this month to cover for somebody. But, yeah, I drive around and work with all of our pitching. And just, you know, it's not always about pitching, about life. You know, we did this thing for a while right before the pandemic hit the Cardinal Corps. A lot of mentorship, so I still do that with the guys and take some guys out to lunch that managers or the pitching coach think need to be talked to about certain things. And I sometimes get called to go talk to someone who needs straightened out a little bit. And, you know, I do a little bit of everything, whatever those guys need me to do, considering, you know, Mr. Moselak and Gary the Rock and Tim Lebeck, our pitching instructor. So, yeah, whatever these guys need, I try to do.
What do you enjoy most about it?
Well, I always say I've got two daughters, 22 and 14. Now I've got like 80 boys. And I've got, you know, now with social media, I reach out to them when I see they've pitched good and things. I don't have their phone numbers, but that's the easiest way to get a hold of these kids now is through social media. And we have an app that we developed that the smarter people developed called Chirp, and we can get through to talk to the guys through that. But, you know, we text back and forth and things. So, I mean, it's pretty good dialogue, and I have a good time with it. One of our guys just got moved up to AA, Cooper Jerpy. So it's like you watching when I watch my daughter do on sports, it's kind of the same thing. I watch these guys get promoted. You know, when Roy Croft come up to the big leagues, I mean, I texted him that night, and I mean, it's like I see things like that, and it gives me tears in my eyes because I know what these guys have been through for the last 3 or 4 years. So it's a lot of fun.
So that part of it, you've always been good at, which is why I'm assuming, you know, asked to do this. And I can attest to it. I was, like I said, we were teammates in 2008. So that was your end of your time here. I was just kind of starting. So imagine me growing up here in St. Louis. I'm sure you'd love to hear this, but watched you, you know, play a lot here in St. Louis as a kid growing up, and get into big league camp, and you're there. And then on the road, they put our lockers by numbers, right? So I wore 46, you were 44. There was no 45 because that's obviously retired.
Yeah.
And so we were right next to each other on the road all the time. So imagine, you know, here's a St. Louis kid that now is, you know, right next to Jason Isringhausen in the locker room. But you were always that mentor to me as a teammate. When I came up, you know, had only pitched in AA, got here, but I can't tell you how many, the nicest dinners I've ever been to were at your invite, and you were paying the bill for it. You know, a lot of bullpen dinners we did. You were leading the bullpen, obviously. Did that kind of stuff. But, man, I remember one time in Colorado you called me and said, come to my room. And we went up there, and you had a suite on the road everywhere, and you called me in. I think we were at the Ritz-Carlton, and you called me in, and you just said, hey, take a seat, you know, have a drink, and let's talk about pitching, and, you know, just kind of as a young player where I see you and you know, the things that you have in the future. And off the field, it was just different. I'll never forget that, going up and knocking on your door. I thought it was a joke. I thought I was going to get pranked. I didn't know what was going to happen when I opened that door. But, you bring me in, and you're like, hey, take a seat, and let's just sit there and talk as friends. And that mentorship is huge for these guys to have that, at the minor league level and have somebody pouring into them and providing some maybe insight and some things and maybe seeing some roadblocks that they might have in the near future and helping them navigate that, right?
Yeah, I think, and it's kind of similar to what I do now. I mean, somebody did that to me way back in the day, so I had John Franco and Brett Saberhagen doing that to me when I was a rookie, and it's just kind of you pay it forward. You want to leave the game in a better place than what you left it. So if you can teach a young kid how to treat the next generation great, well, then you've done your job, and that's what I'm trying to do now in the minor leagues. And these kids need all the help they can get, some of them. And it's great to take them to lunch and learn about their families and find out what's making them click or what's making them not committed to what they need to be doing when they're on the field. And once these kids open up to you and start talking to you, you've got them. And then they trust you, and then they're going to come to you for help when they need it. And that's the kind of relationships I try to build with all the kids. And, I wish there was more of that in the big leagues today, but a lot of these guys are, as soon as the game's over, 5 minutes, they're gone. I mean, they got to get home to their families and do whatever. And, I come into a clubhouse and I sit, you've been there back in the day when Mark DeJean used to sit in the middle of the rooms and hold court with the whole clubhouse. I mean, that's kind of what I do now. And we talk baseball, we talk life, we talk social media, and I get on everybody's case about this and that and flipping through a phone. I mean, we have to make time for them to have time to get on their phones to keep everybody happy. It's almost like making them have nap time and things like that, but it's they got to have time for their phones, and it's just I get on them every day about it, but it's the culture they are now.
Yeah. So what do you enjoy? That's the player side of it, but it sounds like the coaches are asking for help too. What do you enjoy about that on the coaching side, helping the coaches?
Yeah, sometimes we have a young pitching coach, and sometimes they're Latin, sometimes they're American, and it's just that I have a problem with speaking a lot of Spanish, but we can get through it because I'll find a kid, and it's great. So sometimes I'm using a player for me and another coach, and it's crazy. But just to get my point across about how we do things and how we treat kids and just pushing them in the right direction, teaching them routines. And I don't have all the answers, but I still feel that some of my answers will still ring true today as they did back in the day.
Yeah.
I mean, a routine that these kids can figure out and follow, it's everything. I mean, that way they know they've done everything they can do to prepare themselves for that game, and if they fail, they fail. But they can always fall back on the routine for succeeding, and that's what we try to do. And I do that with my daughters, and anywhere from when they're 8 years old and now they're 22. So I mean, it's the same thing.
Yeah, I want to talk about your routine a little bit. I often talk to people about preparing to pitch, especially out of the bullpen. It's a lot different. Most guys come up as starting pitchers in the minor leagues for the most part. They get here. I try to explain to people it is extremely difficult to jump into the starting rotation and stick, right? I mean, a lot of times you go to the bullpen, you learn how to pitch, and then you make that transition when there's an opening. But it's a totally different deal, pitching as a reliever and pitching as a starter. And I remember when I got to the big leagues, Russ Springer and yourself and Marty Mason took me and said, hey, this is how to warm up. And this is important. And this is kind of the point I want to get across. The way you warm up in the bullpen could affect your availability tomorrow, right? So meaning if I warm up and I just throw and throw, and it says, hey, you got the next inning. There's a long inning. There's two pitching changes, whatever. You end up throwing 60 pitches in there. You go out in your inning, you throw 7 pitches in the inning, and your job's done for the
20?
day. Right, and yeah, or if you throw 20. And they say, hey, are you available the next day? You only threw 7 pitches yesterday. You're like, yeah, but I threw 65 in the pen warming up. And so they really worked with me on cutting that warm-up down to, I could be ready in 8 pitches, probably in that 15 to 20 range. You were the unique one. You were the one that, man, when that phone rang, you got up and you threw, and you threw, and you threw, and you threw, and you threw. And I think part of that was your mental side. I think it helped you because you had some anxiety with that everybody did when that phone rang and those save situations. But I think it helped you get through that. You were so dang big and strong that you could kind of take that. And closers back then, your job, Russ Springer would always say, if it's a safe situation, there is no days off. I mean,
Right.
you are in there throwing. So talk a little bit about your preparation, how you prepared yourself going in and getting your mindset ready for the back end of those games.
I still talk to the kids today about my routine, how I wasn't the norm. I was a starter coming up through the minor league, same thing, had Tommy John in 98, came back and made a couple of starts and tore some scar tissue. They moved me to the bullpen because I couldn't throw more than 70 pitches before my arm started hurting. They traded me to Oakland, became the closer out there, had an older guy there, God rest his soul. Doug Jones was the old change-up guy, pitched for the Indians for a long time. And he saw me warm up the first time. He's like, man, you're going to have to change this. You're not, because he was the one that taught me, your best ability is your availability. And I said, I can't stop once I start. It's like eating a Lay's potato chip. Once I start throwing, it's like, man, it's if I feel like I'm going to lose something if I stop throwing. So, but I was able to, towards the end of my career, I was able to get ready, like you're saying, like maybe 15 pitches. But when I first started closing, I was throwing, as soon as I got the third out and I got on the mound, I threw until I went in the game. And I really had to cut that down, or I had to cut down how much playing catch I did before the game. And that's, that's what I work on with every kid today is like, man, you got to take time to rest.
Yeah.
I just had back surgery, and that's my 20th surgery. I don't know if, it took a wear and tear on me. I've had hips replaced, knees replaced, everything. But I wouldn't have changed it for the world.
Right.
When the phone rang and I knew that it was my time to pitch, I got up and started throwing, and it was just like once I got locked in, I couldn't stop until the game was over. And whether it was 100 pitches or 20 pitches, I had to be ready for the next day. So you had to figure out a routine for the next day to get your body ready to do it again.
I also try to explain to people coming out of the bullpen, there's nothing. Me and Brad Thompson were doing a thing a couple weeks ago talking to some fans, and he said, have you ever found anything to replace it? I said, nope, sure haven't. Try to explain, put into words what that's like watching that game. Okay, it's the 7th inning. It's a 2-run game. Okay, it's the 8th inning. It's a 2-run game or a 1-run game. I know I'm going to be in there. The team's counting on me. If I have a bad day, the team has a bad day. Like, what is that like the day in and day out coming in, dealing with those pressure situations for, the majority of your career?
I think I really relied on my routine because, I keep saying, God rest his soul, because all these guys that I'm getting old now, and all my mentors have passed away. But like Bruce Sutter told me, he goes, you're the only guy that on the field that when you have a bad day, the team's gonna have a bad day.
Yeah.
Starter can go out there and give up 7 in the first inning, and he can get a no decision, and press doesn't even really talk to him. But if you screw up, there's gonna be 20 cameras in your face asking you why you screwed up. But just relying on my routine and trusting that I knew I did everything I could to succeed that day, and when I failed, I would be mad because maybe it was a bad pitch or bad pitch selection, but I learned from it each time. And yeah, you make mistakes no matter how many times you've been doing this. When you throw a backup cutter or a backup breaking ball and it gets hit for 400, that happens. Mm-hmm. Sometimes you have to tip your cap and give the guy in the box credit because he's trying to beat you and he beat you. But then tomorrow is a new day, and I always treated the next day as a new day. And I can make that same pitch, and I might get a line drive at somebody or a pop-up. It's just, making sure that I was ready to go every single day and giving it everything I had, because nobody put more pressure on me than myself. Mm-hmm. And still to this day, like even doing my job now, nobody's going to tell me how to do it more than myself and what I'm doing wrong. I learn from it. I always take a lot of notes and journals and things now with my conversations I have with people, so I never forget what's going on. And kind of the same thing. I have, but I had a short-term memory, as a closer, because you can't that day and that pitch and that home run you're never going to get it back. Mm-hmm. So just concentrate on the next day and just do what you can to be ready.
Talk a little bit about you and Dunk and your relationship, mm-hmm. and kind of what he meant to your career. Marty Mason, I know, you guys were really, really close, had a unique relationship. The bullpen coach, he always tells a story about when you first came over and came down to the bullpen and were warming up, and he was like, okay, this is my kind of guy here. You guys hit it off really well, had a great relationship, but I know you and Dunk were really close, had a lot of respect for each other. What do those two guys mean to you?
Well, it was like you were talking earlier about like when I would start throwing and I couldn't stop. Like Marty would act like he's going to get in front of me to stop throwing. I'm like, go ahead and stand in front of me and see what happens. And I hit him more than once. And but that was kind of our relationship. He just got out of the way. But a lot of people don't know this, but Dunk called almost every single one of my pitches my whole career here. We had our own signs that we would do, and he would every time that like I would it would be hard now because of the pitch clock, but back in the day, I would get off the back of the mound and rub up the ball, and I'd look in, and Dunk would tell me what to throw every time. Yeah,
I didn't know that.
And nobody knows that. That's probably one of the first times I've ever told anybody that. He called it. I mean, it was mainly fastball, curveball, and where to throw it, because I wasn't big on scouting reports and things like that. I didn't want to confuse myself and like think too much. I wasn't a big thinker. Mm-hmm. All I wanted to know is like who swung the first pitch and who was hot during the time we were playing them. And then Dunk and Mike Matheny and Yachty took care of the rest. And usually the only time I shook guys off was when I wanted to throw a curveball. But Dunk almost called every single one of my pitches. That way, I always tell him, because then if I screwed up, I could blame Dunk. But
so how did that come about?
It was just one of those things that, we had a meeting one day, and I'm like, he's like, what do you want to do here? And I'm like, you just tell me what to do, and I'll concentrate on doing it. Yeah. He's like, okay, that'll work for me. And he had this sign that he would put his hands on the other side of those pads and put fingers down or tap something or another, and that's how I knew what to throw. And the catchers usually were on the same page with Dunk because Dunk was a catcher. Yeah. But if I wanted to switch it up, I went with Dunk. So that's the way it was. So I can't take much credit for it. I just had to execute. I wasn't smart enough to call pitches.
Yeah. So, I mean, how long were you with Dunk?
Well, I was here 6 or 7 years, so yeah, I wasn't with him in Oakland.
Right.
So it wasn't until I got here. I mean, he was a man of few words.
Yep.
I texted him the day that I found out that he was getting inducted to the Hall of Fame here with St. Louis, and he said, you better get there quick because the speech won't be long. So he's a man of few words, so I'm guessing it might last about 2 or 3 minutes. Yeah. But I can't wait, and I can't wait for Matty Moe to get in this year. Yeah. It's been a long time coming for him, and for the committee to select Dunk. I mean, it's just amazing, and so happy for him.
And deserved. I mean, when you look at that era.
And he was the first pitching coach that started all the positioning of the infielders, and he had his trunk full of all of his books, and he knew exactly where every single ball that was hit off you went wherever, and he kept track of all of that, and he would move infielders around with Okendo. He would move outfielders around with Dave McKay, and that Dunk was our analytics department back in the day.
Yeah, so he had that trunk. He had a trunk.
He had 2 trunks full of these binders that he had like 30 years of information.
Yeah, back to Oakland days.
And it was
he
all
charted every pitch.
Done with protractors and rulers and lines and dotted lines. And I mean, he had all kinds of stuff. A lot of chicken scratch, but Dunk understood it and put it to good use.
Yeah. Yeah, and that was, I mean, the meetings that he ran. I remember Marty Mason came to me in my first meeting in the big leagues, and he said, hey, we're going to go have this meeting, and I want you to understand this doesn't change who you are and what you do. And essentially what you had said earlier, he said, you really need to take away from this, how do you finish guys and who's going to swing at the first pitch, who's going to swing early. So explain a little bit about why that's important, because I think people don't really understand that aspect of it. As a reliever, why is it important to know who's going to swing at the first pitch, who's going to swing early, and how you can finish guys? Like, why are those scouting reports, if they're going to give you all that information, why are those the 2 most important ones for a reliever?
Well, I think first of all about the finishing thing is almost every reliever in the big leagues now has a swing and miss pitch. Yeah. And so you have to, when you come out of the bullpen, you better have your swing and miss pitch ready to go. Whether it's a slider, curveball, split, changeup, fastball, I could go on and on with the analytics stuff. But finishing guys is like you better be able to throw your swing and miss pitch somewhat out of the zone whenever you want. And I'm not saying an uncompetitive pitch where it's hitting the other batter's box, but a pitch is maybe 4 inches off the strike zone, a slider down away to a righty. And being able to finish guys is important, and knowing who – we always talk about the averages, batting averages, OPS, all this stuff, all the numbers that we track. It all dictates by the count that we're in. And once we get no balls and 1 strike, all the numbers are in our favor. So we got to get strike 1. But if you're facing somebody like Nomar Garciaparra, who swings at the first pitch 80% of the time, you don't have to throw him a strike to get strike 1. And Sonny Gray talked to our kids in the spring about his ball moves so much going both ways that he concentrates just pouring it in the middle of the zone. Now, granted, it doesn't go in the middle of the zone, and Sonny Gray's got good stuff. So some of our guys can't throw it down the middle every time. But if you're thinking of getting ahead, and we have all the numbers, I think maybe you can throw 100 pitches down the middle and probably 4 of them would be put in play for base hits. It's crazy to think we make it so much harder on ourselves than what it is as pitchers. And we got to simplify things. Getting strike one is the number one thing that we can do as a pitcher. So knowing who swings at the first pitch and then what pitch you have to finish certain hitters are the two most important things.
Yeah, it's crazy to think that there's guys in the big leagues that you can come in and you know they're not going to swing at the first pitch, and you can just throw it right down the middle because they're trying to get the count in their favor, right? Because like you said, the batting averages, if you throw ball one, drastically change their at bat. And so they're going in there willing to take that first pitch, especially late in the game, with guys on base, and they might change. So in these scouting reports, they might say, hey, when guys are on base, he's going to be a first pitch swinger. And you're like, okay, now when I come in, I got to locate that down in the zone. I got to make it's an out pitch on my first one. It's two totally different approaches there. That was one thing when I got to the big leagues. It was interesting for me because in the minor leagues, we're not doing that. Right? I mean, you're just every pitch you're just trying to compete with, and then you get to the big leagues, you start to take it to that level of knowing like, man, I can get a free strike right here. Then I got to make one more quality pitch that could be out of the zone because he's behind in the count, and then I got my finish pitch. I can essentially end this at bat with only throwing one pitch down the middle that I knew he wasn't going to swing at anyway. It completely changes it. But that's the level of scouting reports and information that Duncan and Marty Mason and all that would do and would provide for us to be able to do that. Now the information, how do you think you would do in today's era with all the information that's available?
Well, I think one thing that all this information does, especially for us in the minor leagues, it tells us what kids do well really quick. Like we can look at like 4 or 5 games and find out what he does well. Like we can look at college and what he does well, like how he spins the ball and what kind of rotation it has, what kind of movement it has. I think for me, what it would have done I probably would have thrown my curveball more.
Yeah.
But I relied on my fastball and cutter, and I got strikeouts with my curveball. And I think I would have thrown more 0-0 curveballs to get that free strike because nobody wants to hit an 0-0 curveball because that's not a very much of a so-called damage pitch that a hitter can do damage on. And that's what I try to explain to these guys. It's like, when you get behind the count, what are you going to throw to limit damage? And that's what that's what you have to get really good at because you're going to be behind in the count quite a bit.
Yeah.
You got to be able to throw something that's going to limit damage. You can't throw it down the middle 2-0 because the batting average is probably 408 or something like that. It's crazy, but using these numbers to show these kids how really easy it is if you just get ahead of people and using your good stuff to get people out. We make it so hard on ourselves because we think that we're facing the 27 Yankees every game, and we got to take a little credit and realize that we are good at what we do and use it to our ability.
I can remember being in the minor leagues and A-ball struggling, and hearing guys like yourself or big league guys talk about or watching games and seeing, gosh, they throw 3-1 breaking balls, they throw 3-0 changeups, 3-1 changeups. 2-0 changeups. So if I want to get there, that's what I have to do. And then I would try to go out and throw a 2-1 curveball, and next thing you know, I'm 3-1. I'm not even close. I'm not even competitive with it because I can't throw it for a strike. So it's that balance, and then I saw it start to flip when I got good enough. It's like it's one thing to know how to do it. It's another thing to be able to do it, right? So in A-ball, you're probably in A-ball because you can't throw your breaking ball for a strike.
Exactly.
You're still trying.
You can't throw something for a strike.
Yeah, you might be able to throw one pitch for a strike. Then you get to Double-A, and maybe you can throw 1.5 or 2 for a strike. But man, behind in the count throwing, it's different. I'm impressed. I start, these college baseball's on all the time right now. I watched a kid the other day. 3-1 changeup, 3-2 changeup, and ended up finishing somebody on like a 3-2 slider, like behind in the count. So I feel like they're more advanced earlier on. I just remember sitting there going, if I want to get to the big leagues, I got to be able to throw breaking balls behind in the count, and I couldn't do it. And then you get there, and it's like there's not a light bulb moment that's like, okay, it's just over time. You start to have more success with it. You figure out, how to utilize it more. You know how to command it more. And next thing you know, you're in the big leagues and you're staring in at Yachty and it's 2-1 and he's calling a changeup. You're like, well, I better figure out how to do it, or if not, I'm going to be back out in AAA trying to figure it out.
And it is. It's nothing more than, and it's not. It's an industry that we try to, as an industry, we want to get the most out of our investments as we can, quickly as possible, like from our draft and things like that. But it still takes these kids a long time to develop into the pitchers that we need them to be. And they get here pretty quick.
It's happening faster now than ever.
They're getting there faster and faster every year. I mean, we got a guy pitching tonight that was drafted last year, this Skeens. But he's like Captain America. He's a monster. And, he's a different breed. He's like Strasburg of 10 years ago.
Yeah.
And, he's a special person. And there's, once in a generation type of guy. And, God love him. I hope he stays healthy because he'd be fun to watch for many years.
Yeah.
I still love good pitching. I mean, no matter what, if it's on our team or not, I still love good pitching. But I wish he was on our side, And but it's getting these guys to trust their stuff and knowing that they can. When we throw a bullpen, and then that's another thing is like when every time that these guys pick up a baseball, there's an intent with every throw. We're not going out there just to spin a breaking ball and let it bounce in the other batter's box and look at an iPad and say, man, that had a lot of spin on it, didn't it? And I'm like, yeah, but it was 8 feet outside. Mm-hmm. I said, you don't need the iPad to tell you if it's a good pitch or not. You throw it for a strike. Just show me that you can throw 8 out of 10 pitches for a strike, and then we're going to get something with that.
Yeah. I want to go back to a moment. You're involved in a couple of these because I was – so early on, just kind of like eyes wide open, trying to take everything in. A lot of lessons learned my first year. And your last year here wasn't your best year, right?
No.
You were going through some struggles, and I had a front row seat for that and how you handled it. And I'll never forget, we're in Milwaukee, and you had a tough stretch.
Yeah.
And they brought you in for a safe situation. I had pitched right before you. I think I set up, and we come in and it didn't end very well. And Milwaukee's locker room is about 3 steps from the field. So like I'm watching on TV, and as soon as it doesn't go well, about 3 seconds later, that door's open and people start coming in. And you walked in, and again, our lockers right next to each other, and you walked in, and I don't know what to expect, right? I'm like, this has been a couple tough weeks here, and I don't know what's going to happen here, but you could tell it was probably the last straw, right? And you walk up, you put your glove in your locker, and you look down and you go, hey, kid, great job today. And I was like, thanks, all right, thanks. And you left there. You went into Tony's office. There was nobody in there. And I think the TV must have talked back to you and said something that you didn't like, because there was some sounds coming out of Tony's office and some grunts, and Tony went running in there, and there was some more sounds. And then you came out, and then the media was there. Like you said, the media's there. And everybody's right there, and you're fighting back tears. And I sat right next to you and listened to you stand there and answer every question and handle it like an absolute pro. Fast forward, one of the worst days of my career, Adam Wainwright's 20th win. Mm-hmm. I'm pitching with a 5-run lead, and I give up 5. And it was his last opportunity, and had a pretty good chance to win the Cy Young. And if he gets that 20th win, ended up losing it to Tim Lincecum with 14 wins. And I go into the locker room, and I'll never forget, all I want to do is crawl into a hole and hide and just run, right? And I'll never forget, I sat there and I said, I watched Izzy stand up like a man and answer every single question that was asked him, fighting back tears, and I will do the same. And I stood in my locker and I answered every question, fighting back tears. And but it was like those moments, man, like sitting there watching. Like I said, you were involved in so many of those. You were so good to me. You took care of me. You took me out to lunch. Every time I'd come in, I'd have new hunting gear sitting on my desk after a road trip, and like all the things that were involved, and just kind of, you were just being a great teammate, a great mentor. But I've never told you that. I don't think there's a lot of things that just the way you handled everything. It's not easy pitching in your hometown. It's not easy being the closer and the focus of it. And I just, that was something that a lesson that I learned in that moment that I will take with me the rest of my life. And just from watching you kind of handle that and go through that adversity. It's not fun,
No.
But there was people in there watching that learned lessons from it, I guess is my point.
Well, I've always been one. I always took responsibility of my actions, and those guys that come in, the media guys, they have a job to do too. Mm-hmm. Their job is to ask me why I screwed up. But yeah, that was one of the tough ones. I mean, that one, and then the last one in 2006, I blew a save at old RFK Stadium in Washington, and it was September 9th. That was when my hip was messed up and had to have hip surgery for the first time of like 6 surgeries on my hip. And I went into Tony's office. I said, Tony, I'm not helping this team anymore. We need to have somebody else close. And we had a pretty decent lead in the division. And we got in by 1 game, and then we ended up winning the World Series, and I made Adam Wainwright famous and all that good stuff. But, those, like that one in Milwaukee and that one in Washington were probably the 2 toughest ones. Like, for me to tell somebody I can't do it anymore, that was never me. And I was always a proud guy that would take it no matter what. But I knew I wasn't helping the team, and I thought we had a chance to do something special that year, but it wasn't for sure. But we went through some few guys that year, closing, and then I talked to Duncan, Tony. We talked about Waino doing it. I'm like, he's a young pup. He don't know no better. Just send him out there. He's got the stuff to do it. And the rest is history. And Waino did what Waino did for however many years, and it was a lot of fun to watch. But yeah, I take credit for that totally with Waino's career. But I look back, and those were probably the 2 roughest ones. I did one when I was with Oakland. We were in Yankee Stadium, and we were up by 1 run. I threw 2 pitches. I gave up back-to-back home run on 2 pitches. And the first thing I could say to the press was like, I'm rested for tomorrow. I mean, because you can't. What am I going to say? Right. I threw 2 fastballs, and David Justice and Bernie Williams hit 2 home runs. I mean, the second guy hit it before they could even announce his name. And the press came in there, was flying in there. Everybody, I was like, I don't know what to tell you guys. I'm like, I'm good for tomorrow. That's all. Doing what you do at the end of the game, or even a starter, or doing this game, crazy stuff's going to happen. And sometimes you got to laugh about it. Sometimes you got to cry about it. But yeah, it's baseball. I mean, there's no crying in baseball, right? We're always told, but sometimes it's pretty rough on you, but it's part of the game, and that's why you love it so much.
Sometimes there's a lot of crying on the drive home.
Yeah.
When nobody's
Try
around.
to get home before you see the girls and everything like that. Yeah.
So another moment in Colorado. You come in. I had pitched, I think, right before you. I think Flores had pitched right before me. And we were up by a few. I come out of the game. It's bases loaded. You come in. First guy hits a triple. And then you get out of it. Of course, you gave up all of our runs and none of yours.
Don't leave them on. Don't leave them on.
You walked into the dugout and you said, if you don't want them to score, boys, don't leave them on.
Well, I mean,
and I sat there as a young guy going, that's my ERA going through the roof right now.
Yeah, especially in Colorado. I mean, it's just that's a different place to pitch. And I say that still to this day. Like, I'll be in the dugout now with young guys, and they come in, and sometimes they're mad and they're pissed off and they don't want to shake the guy's hand. I say, get up and shake the man's hand. And I say, if you don't want them to score, don't leave them on. And I still say it to this day. And it's the truth. I mean, you don't let somebody else mop up your work. I mean, do a better job. And if you don't like it, pitch better. We say it a lot. I say it a lot.
Yeah, I love it. So what do you excuse me, what do you think post-career? Like, did you think when post-career that you were going to still be into the coaching, still connected? I mean, is this what you wanted to do when you were done playing? Did you ever think about it?
I didn't know. I mean, like in 2006 when I was down, but I didn't leave the team. I stayed with the team, and I stayed in the bullpen every game. I was on crutches, all that crap, but it didn't matter. I was down there with Waino, and I was down there with Randy Flores, Josh Kinney, Tyler Johnson, and talking these kids through the games, and, like, don't be scared. Like, I still remember talking with Flo Mason and I. He was coming in to face Carlos Delgado. Mm-hmm. We're like, see how far you can hit this ball. He's like, what do you mean, see how far you can hit it? I'm like, the last thing you want to do here is walk him. And I think he ended up striking him out or something. He got out of it. But it was like talking these kids through it, and then talking with Waino about, controlling your breaths and just little things, and get ready for the gang pile. It's what we live for, and we're going to do it 2 more, 3 more times this year. And I thought about it then, and then my 2010, my second to last year, I went back to the Mets, and I was in the bullpen with a bunch of young kids, and they signed me to kind of mentor some guys, and I really liked it. And then that was kind of the itch I got. And then when I got out of baseball, I worked with SIU Edwardsville for a couple years, and then one day I called Mo and just said, I want to help. What can I do? And, Mo, how much you want to work? And I said, well, I've got kids. I don't want to work a ton, but I'd want to travel if I could and help the guys. And, God willing, him and Mr. DeWitt have always been good to me, and they allow me to do this job. And I just try to do it the best of my ability and be a good soldier for them. And, we're going through some rough patches here the last couple of years, but, the future's bright. I think we got some really good arms in the minor leagues. But yeah, I really enjoy this, and hopefully I keep doing it.
Yeah, we're almost done here, but I want you to talk a little bit about your life at home. And you mentioned your 2 daughters, and I know your one is in college playing volleyball and had a great career there. Talk a little bit about that, about being here for all these kids here, but your most important ones being at home for your two daughters.
Yeah, they're pretty special. I mean, the oldest one is, well, both of them are. My wife said they're just like me. I mean, they have an edge to them. When the chips are down, they get pretty angry, and they got a little rattlesnake in them, and I love it, and I look forward to watching them play. Remember, Madeline's got one more year of volleyball. She just graduated, and so now she's got one more year. She'll get her master's in MBA from Tennessee Tech, and then we'll see where that takes her. But she's taking some summer classes now, so she can graduate in May. And my little one is a freshman at Father McGivney and plays soccer and volleyball. And she's a better the oldest one's going to get mad at me for this one. I think she's a better athlete than the tall one, but the one's 6 foot and the other one's 5'2". So the oldest one took after me, and the younger one took after Mama a little bit. But she's fast as all get, and she's a pretty special little athlete. She's, you know how it is. They got to do the work. If I can get them off their phones, it helps. But they have a drive in them that my wife and I instilled in them, and they're good girls, so I can't complain.
Yeah, my daughter's a pitcher. We were talking about it before we got on here, and she's 13, just turned 13, and we've been focusing the last month on 0-0 curveballs and what an 0-2 curveball looks like. And so you're talking about like finding that finished pitch. Like we're in that, right? And it's so much fun to see your kids. Like this weekend, she had a perfect sequence in an 0-2. I said it never should be on the plate. It should start, in the river, as they say, and break off, like you said, 4 inches off. And to see her execute it this weekend, because we've tried so hard and made a mistake over the middle, an 0-2 hit, it's like, okay, she's trying to do it, can't get it there. And then all of a sudden when it clicks, and it's like, man, it's just so cool to be able to work. I didn't know that stuff till I was 21, so now at 13 she's getting it and then able to execute it. It's really fun to watch.
When you watch your daughters or sons or people you're coaching, when you talk to them about something and they watch it and they practice it and then they do it in a game and their eyes light up and you see them smile, and then you come in and say I move a guy on the mound to the other side of the mound and he goes out and deals for an inning, he's been struggling, he comes in and gives me a huge hug. Yeah. I mean, that's what coaching's all about. And that kid may never make it to the big leagues, but for that night, he was the happiest guy in the world because he got through a clean inning. And it's rough in the minor leagues. It's rough on these kids that they hang on every single out, every single pitch. And if you can do one thing for them to, like, my gosh, look at the way this moves, or I can throw strikes now, and watching the eyes light up and watching them smile, and then when they're happy, it makes me happy. That's all it is to it.
Yeah. Well, you've taught me a lot of lessons, whether you know it or not. I've enjoyed our relationship over the time, being a teammate. Learned a lot from you in that 1 year together, and I'll always appreciate that and owe you for that one. But thanks for being here today.
Yes.
Thanks for sharing some of those stories. We could tell stories all day. We could come back.
We can tell some good stories, actually.
Yeah, we got to do the unedited version of that. Those we can't put out. But appreciate you being here, man. Appreciate everything you do for the organization still, and best of luck to you, and keep going with the young guys.
Thank you. It's a pleasure. I appreciate it. Thank you.
All right. Well, you can catch any of the podcasts that we've had over the last 3 years anywhere that you get your podcast, any major platform. You can also watch it on the Cardinals YouTube channel. This one's being recorded on video along with all of our other interviews. So thanks for listening, and look forward to getting back with you guys next month.